Welcome back, Wastelanders. Welcome to a new age of discovery, at least if the world was free from the ilk of the Brotherhood of Steel. Understand that this Brotherhood of Greed wants to remove the vast archives of pre-war technology from the hands of fortune seekers like you or I. People who are attempting to better the lives of those around them. Our goal is not to dominate our fellow man with our newly found Gatling lasers, micro-fusion reactors, solar capacitors, or any pre-war inspired tech, but to survive the wasteland and provide a better foundation for the future generations. To the Brotherhood of Steel, however, the wasteland and its irradiated inhabitants are not worthy of such technological marvel and thus should be treated as savages native to a land of dust and hardship. Or at least, that is how the NCR and its various loyalists would describe the Brotherhood. Others, less politically inclined, would present them as a group of warriors, motivated to protect humanity from itself by securing weapons and artifacts from before the war. Regardless of your political motivations, this is the story of the Brotherhood of Steel to the year of 2287. The story of the Brotherhood of Steel began just days before the bombs fell in 2077, when the Great War had reached its peak between China and the USA. In the previous report, we discussed the rise of the Master and the devastating FEV virus. It's interesting to note that two vastly different stories would begin in the same place. Of course, their stories begin at different points, but it's clear fate had touched the Mariposa facility. Maxon, a second-in-command captain of the local army garrison, oversaw the multiple scientific experiments conducted upon prisoners of war and civilian dissidents alike. The U.S. government had hoped that utilizing the FEV virus to create superhuman soldiers, the need for industry-intensive power armor would subside. Much to the dismay of Maxon and his men, the scientists and researchers conducting terrible experiments, often disregarding the cries and pleas for mercy. For Maxon, this would not last. It stood against everything he had sworn to protect. The U.S. that Maxon knew that he had protected for countless years against communist aggression had lost itself in the Great War, becoming an abomination much like the beings the FEV would create. Maxon and his men would seize the Mariposa facility, execute the inhumane researchers, and seal the facility away, keeping its sin and black taint away from the world. Thus began his secession from the U.S. and his fabled exodus to the Lost Hills military bunker. The exodus from the Mariposa military base to the Lost Hills bunker saw Maxon and his men plagued by this newly created radiation from the end of it all. As they had begun their trek through the wasteland, their fear had become realized. The world they once knew only a month before had ceased to exist. In its place was a land ripe with raiders, rapists, Satanists, and radioactive ash, a far cry from the golden US of A, triumphed by loyalists and fools. Upon reaching the Lost Hills bunker, now suffering casualties and many wounded, Maxon redoubled his efforts and sought to create a new civilization of man, without its faults, with only its strengths. The first days of the Brotherhood of Steel had begun, and the new Elder Maxon began to build his vast military infrastructure in the depths of the Lost Hills bunker. This new headquarters would remain the military home of all Brotherhood for the foreseeable future, until the various splinter factions would diverge and found new headquarters across the wasteland of mutants, raiders, and hardship. It's truly difficult to determine the fact from the fiction in the history of the Brotherhood. Some sources claim various factions or splinter groups existed in Texas, Chicago, even Colorado, and Montana. If true, the Brotherhood is one of the farthest reaching, or at least most expansive factions to walk the wasteland. While the East Coast and West variants of the Brotherhood have different ideals, they do practice the same core principles. Their ideology is truly remarkable, walking a fine line between religion and complete fanaticism. Their avarice for the old world and pre-war technology is one of their multiple defining characteristics. The Brotherhood believes that pre-war technology running rampant was the true cause of the Great War. That this technology was not carefully monitored, not organized, and ultimately not respected. Perhaps, in some sense, they are right. Their values do hold merit 200 years after the old world fell to ash, but some of their idealism can also be lost to a misinterpretation of history. Regardless, the Brotherhood seeks, for good or for ill, to capture, dominate, and otherwise remove pre-war technology from the wandering hands of wastelanders, fortune seekers, and these rising post-war governments and tribal powers. Instead of hiding away this technology, the Brotherhood seeks to use it, donning full suits of power armor in the hopes of defeating their enemies by massive appearance of force of arm, rather than by use. Of course, in the chaos that is the wasteland, the Brotherhood too was ill-prepared to face their rising adversaries. The Vipers, the NCR, the Super Mutants, and perhaps their greatest adversary of all, the Enclave. Specifically, the war with the Vipers was a particularly dark chapter in the history of the Brotherhood, who at the time had believed in their military superiority of armament. It gave them a certain dominance above all other wastelanders. Their thought, however merited, was that anyone in sound mind and demeanor would surely surrender at the sight of such magnificence. A full strike force, donning gleaming silver power armor, armed with laser Gatling guns, plasma rifles, and an assortment of pre-war tech. Surely they would not face down such power, such awe. The Vipers, motivated by a sheer lust for combat, death, and wanton destruction, held back nothing against these Silver Crusaders, to the dismay of the Brotherhood, who would suffer staggering initial casualties against poison-tipped archaic weapons the Vipers would wield. The arrogance shouldered by the Brotherhood would cost them Elder Maxon II, the son of the first Elder Maxon, who had led the Brotherhood to security shortly after the Great War. In 2155, Elder Maxon II's death would rally the Brotherhood to muster their full force against the zealous Vipers, leading to their eventual defeat in the late 2150s. This force of arms from the Brotherhood would be their first full-scale conflict against an adversary in the wasteland, and a painful reminder that this new land breeds exceedingly dangerous opponents. It was during this campaign against the Vipers that the Brotherhood would again begin to interact with the outside world, developing a cautious trade relationship with the Hub, a major trade outpost that organized caravans from Shady Sands to Junktown to all across the Mojave. This chapter of trade for the Brotherhood would also lead to their discovery of the Super Mutants, and that of the fabled Vault Dweller. The Vault Dweller's tale of bravery and heroism, regardless of the variations of versions spun by soothsayers and oral historians, was a paramount moment in the Brotherhood history. The Vault Dweller would be the first to successfully survive the quote-unquote Fool's Errand issued by the Brotherhood, and was inducted into the ranks. The Vault Dweller's tale deserves a more detailed report, which will be extrapolated at a later date, but this moment was a significant one for that of the Brotherhood. As it was with the Vault Dweller, that the Brotherhood would learn of the Master's plans for the Mojave and by consequence all of remaining humanity. They were captivated by the tale woven by the Vault Dweller, mustering a full squad of paladins to assist in the defeat of the Master and the protection of various human settlements against any external threats. By 2242, after almost 60 years of internal dogmatic practices that only allowed for pure-blood recruits birthed within the various outposts, the Brotherhood was no longer a major military faction in the wasteland. The end of the Master had allowed the NCR to capture the vacuum of power And as this force rose, it was in direct odds with the Brotherhood's desire to withhold all pre-war technology. During this period of time, the Brotherhood also launched a series of expeditions, one to Chicago, which would eventually become the East Coast chapter, situated in the ruins of DC. And various military outposts would crop up across old California, effectively spreading their force of strength and disrupting their concentrated power. But the story of the Brotherhood will be continued in another report, Wastelander, for their history and their influence on us all should not be so narrowed that a single report can do them justice. The story of the Brotherhood is often influenced by the opinion of the orator, as all in the Waste have their opinions, whether positive or negative. It should be taken at face value. Undoubtedly, the Brotherhood believes itself to be a good institution, set on delivering a world from the tyranny pre-war technology produced and preserving it from additional destruction. Or, this is what they would lead you to believe. As we discuss in the following report, this ideology may not be so angelic as we begin to discover with more recent reports coming from the East Coast. Until then, Wastelanders, be safe.